Good morning, KOTA territory. Welcome back to the KOTA Now desk. Today, I'm not joined by First Alert meteorologist Ryan Hill anymore. In fact, I am now joined by Dr. Lycia Thornburg, a board-certified dermatologist here in Rapid City, kind of giving you a little sneak peek at her upcoming book, Chasing Beauty. So, I mean, first of all, how are you? How are you doing? I mean, from the morning show to now, kind of the morning desk, KOTA Now desk here.
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing?
Well, this is exciting to be back here. I've never been on this part of your show. I've done a monthly segment for quite a while up there, so this feels new and exciting, maybe a little intimidating. So I'm looking forward to this experience.
No, and
always challenging
I was
myself.
Gonna say, before we even start talking about your book, what do you think about the newsroom? Is it what you expected, or is
It's
it a little
way
underwhelming?
bigger than I thought it would be. I mean, this must be the largest one in Rapid City, right? I mean, our region.
I can't say for sure, but I think it might be.
It's big.
It might be.
It's beautiful.
So kind of starting off a little bit, tell us a little bit about your book, Chasing Beauty. When is it coming out? When can our viewers kind of expect this piece of literature?
Okay, so it's coming out on February 21st on Amazon, and you can get your copy.
Okay.
And this is something I've been working on for the past year. I talked about writing a book 2014, 2015.
Right.
I even had an outline going. And I've talked to so many people along the way, and I've heard that same story. They've all said, oh, I'm going to write a book. And I think the hardest thing is writing the first sentence. And in fact, I found a book coach who that's her tagline, write the first
Right.
sentence.
No, and I mean it's kind of funny that you say that because, like you said, it seems to be the common case for every author. It's
Right.
kind of trying to figure out the right way to kind of start that.
Right.
That hook to say, right? So I mean, kind of talking a little bit about the hook and kind of your first starting sentence when it came to writing Chasing Beauty. Why write a book in the first place? I mean, you're a dermatologist here. You are
Busy.
a very, very, successful dermatologist
Thank
here
you.
in Rapid City. And your presence on social media, it's very active, and I've seen some of your work and all that. So, I mean, why decide to go the book route?
Right. So I've been asked that a lot. And I think one thing about how I am is I'm constantly challenging myself for what's next. And I noticed when I was traveling around to these aesthetic meetings and conferences, there's a disconnect depending if you're at a dermatology meeting or a multi-specialty meeting, that some of us aren't all talking to each other. And I've heard it said many times, and it's true, competition is at the bottom and collaboration is at the top. And so that's my mindset, and I want to spread that.
Gotcha. And then kind of talking about spreading that mindset, how are you doing that through your book, your
Right.
upcoming book?
Well, so first of all, I was on an airplane and I was last minute upgrade and talking to this gentleman, Chris Dyer. He's got a great book about business culture. You guys should buy that on Amazon. He's got the 7 pillars of a successful business. And so I was talking with him about why he was traveling, and he was traveling to talk about his book. And I made that sentence, that statement that so many people have said to me, oh, I want to write a book. And he said, well, then why don't you? And I was like,
Ooh, that's like a good challenge.
yeah.
Right there.
And I was like, why don't I? And so as we talked a little bit more about positive company culture, and as the plane was landing, he said, you should really write that book. Here are 2 names of different book coaches that I've worked with that help you get you organized and motivated. Why don't you email them? Well, would you know I sat on that for 3 weeks, nervous.
Well, I don't blame you, especially if I was just telling, well, why don't you?
Do I have time?
Right?
Can I do this? So I talked it over with my husband, and he was like, absolutely. And he is always my biggest supporter. And then my girls, we did a family vote. I'm like, if I do this, it's going to take a lot of time away, potentially from the family. I might need some help with research. And they were all like, do it, Mom. So I emailed the 2 book coaches, and the first one was like, nope, I'm full. I just have clients in LA. And I was like, all right, sorry. And the second one, I heard back from her, and she said, let's set up a meeting. I'm in Chicago. We can do a Zoom meeting, and we can see if we're a good fit. And her name is Pithy Wordsmithery, is her company. And from the first moment we spoke, Christmas of 2023, I was like, this woman is inspirational. I want to work with her, even if the book never gets published. And so I started the journey. And that was 10 weeks of doing outlines. And at least an hour or 2 on the phone with her every week. And then she gave me 5 to 10 hours of homework a week. for that first 10 weeks.
Oh man, that's, I mean, we're talking about 10 weeks. That's like 2 months and a half.
Right. And it's like at that point, we weren't even sure what I was going to do. Was I going to write about my job? Was I going to write about personal life experiences? And so we went through and so we decided okay, that's book number 2. That's book number 3. But Chasing Beauty is book number 1.
And here, I was going to say, if you can kind of show some of the viewer, there we go, perfect. Talk a little bit about the cover. I know we touched on it a little bit on Good Morning Black Hills. It is such a eye-catching cover. It's very vibrant, very pink, and also the flowers on kind of that.
I love sakura branches.
It
Yes.
looks so cool.
So you know the Japanese, right? They gave us the sakura trees in the tidal basins in Washington, D.C. My oldest daughter went to Georgetown for college, and every time I would land there in the spring to see her, I was just awestruck with the beauty of the trees there.
Right.
And they're my favorite. And
I
so
don't blame you. They are really nice.
yeah. So that was kind of an homage to my oldest in her college, and sort of a wonderful feeling of her success and doing well and landing there in our beautiful nation's capital.
And what about the figure, the head?
Right.
Behind,
that was so hard.
Those sakura branches.
So imagine you've spent 10 weeks doing the outline. Now you're at March, and then you've spent until August just pounding away chapters, right? Refining them, and you've got some to do, but they said, oh, we don't want to fall behind in our timeline. You're also going to have separate meetings with a book design team. And I was like, how am I going to fit this in my job, my charity Made for Shade, and still working on those chapters and the research? And so I had to go, I'm like, you know what, one step at a time. Let's go to Books A Million. My husband went with me. We called it a date night. We walked down the aisles. We took notes of what was beautiful, what inspired me, and then I made a Pinterest board. And in the end, I said, a big theme of the book is that, I mean, you don't have to be beautiful, right? But so often people feel that the inside beauty is trapped under their outside envelope.
Right.
And so I'm trying to show that that's universal to all of us. We all feel that way. We all look in the mirror and we're our hardest critic. And a lot of the beginning of the book is, why are we chasing that? And so I was kind of showing the layers of that, our inside being under our outside.
Right. And then, I mean, you mentioned a lot of, all of us as a collective. I mean, what are some of the topics that are highlighted in your book, talking about, beauty, talking about dermatology, talking about all these different things that we kind of touched a little bit on Good Morning Black Hills?
Right. Well, I thought it was interesting when we got a lot of chapters done, and my book coach said, I've really been thinking about how this book lays out, and I want to play devil's advocate. What about the people that think the aesthetic industry is ridiculous and doing these treatments are ridiculous, and how has that evolved? And I want you to do some interviews. I'm like, what? She said, I want you to find a leading women and genders expert in the nation, and I want you to interview them and find out why over centuries women have chased beauty. And I was so nervous to send those emails to ask these professors at universities if they would speak with me. And again, another shout out to Georgetown University, because they right away got back to me with their leading women and genders studies professor, Dr. Emerald Christopher. And she's worked at a lot of different universities and now is a professor there. And we talked about, and I mean, that was an hour and a half conversation. That could be a podcast on its own.
Right.
But we talked about, why are women doing this? And it seems like, back even in Egyptian times, they can find evidence of antiquities of women plucking their hairlines to have a higher hairline to appear more beautiful. Or even buried with them were different little vessels containing makeups, inks, and dyes, where they used coal to line their eyes. And so this isn't a new thing. This has been around for centuries.
Right. So it's kind of, so at least tying it back into your book, so kind of going through that history, I mean, first of all, based off the title, Chasing Beauty, right?
Right.
So kind of going, your conversation with this, leading expert
Right.
in this subject matter kind of led you through some of the history.
Right, and it also led me to why now. So now people, before we had the right to vote as women, a lot of women chased beauty because it secured a better mate with a higher earning potential, social status, whatnot. But now that the playing field's been, very much changed from those
Right.
times, and we can earn our own money and whatnot. Women are still doing it. So why are they doing it? And that was a really interesting conversation that you'll find in chapter 1 about why we're still doing it.
Right.
And then what that means for sort of marginalized populations that don't have the money to do it. So that's in the book as well, and part of that conversation with Dr. Emerald. But I think that one of the tenets I said is never push this on patients. Let the patients drive this. Let the patients say if something concerns them, because it's never my issue. It's if something bothers the patient. If it bothers you, and somebody else looks at you and thinks, oh, why would you fix that? Then it's up to, it's your choice, right? If you want to work on something.
I mean,
Kind of like being in shape,
yes,
right?
exactly. And I mean, kind of talking about all these different topics, it seems like there's a little bit for a little bit of information for everybody.
Right.
Who is this book meant for?
Right. Well, it's meant for several different, they grilled me on that, because they're like, Lycia, you're writing to several groups. And I'm like, I really feel like I have to. I'm writing to patients. I'm writing to other practitioners in the industry that I want to work together with and level up together. And then I'm writing to industry, to people that are producing the Botox, the fillers, and giving a shout out to those companies that are doing it respectfully, and putting that in the book, the companies that are really doing the studies, doing the research, making sure that they're ethically advertising these procedures.
Right.
And it's to all of them.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, especially with a lot of the news that has come out recently, kind of about those ethical procedures that sometimes aren't looked on the limelight. Correct on the.
So
limelight
what he's
as well.
talking about is there were some patients that had HIV in the last couple of years when they had a vampire peel down in the southeast part of the United States from an unlicensed facility. And then there was the big scandal about 6 months ago with the fake Botox. So you need to ask your person doing it, is this authentic? Is this what you're saying it is? I talk about, if you're telling patients it's Botox as a practitioner, it better be Botox. If it's different, then just say it is. But yeah, a lot of those ethical concerns.
So does your book kind of help spread that message as well?
Yes,
Of like
100%.
making sure that the people who are going through these procedures are taking the proper precautions ahead of time. Even the professionals taking that proper, knowing what are the consequences if this happens.
Well, let me tell you a story about this. So there's 5 different types of anubotulinum A, and
so what exactly is that really?
Botox, right?
Botox,
So
okay.
Botox is a type of anubotulinum A. There's 5 different types. And when a lot of the competitors came out, the competitive companies said, oh, we're the same as this drug, but you just multiply the dilution by 2.5. So these drugs come as a powder form, and when you reconstitute it with saline, you're creating the substance. And the message was just multiply it by 2.5. Well, what happened is that the assay studies for the diffusion of these different drugs when they're approved by the FDA work differently, and they work differently in different parts of the body. And so on the upper third of the face, the dilution was correct. But when the pediatricians in the hospitals did the dilution for limb spasticity for children, there were children who died, because it's not a 2.5 dilution multiplier for the arms. It diffuses differently. It's a different assay. And so when people bounce between different types of anubotulinum A as a practitioner, and whatever the motivation is for them to do that, that has a significant effect on how of an expert you are, because you are working with so many different things. It's taken me a long time to become proficient in the one that I chose, but I say pick one and stick with it. And I've picked Botox based on their assay studies of what I'm comfortable with and my outcomes for my patients. And that doesn't mean that other people can't become experts with the one they choose, but they need to know it, and they need to not jump between the different types.
Right, and that kind of helps segue us into kind of the next kind of topic a little bit, is how has your career, I mean, gearing a little bit away from the book and talking a bit more about your career, I mean, what made you want to pursue dermatology?
Oh, so I was as a child, I had eczema, and I was one of those kids with bloody arms, and my doctor that I knew of was Dr. Milky in Milwaukee, and he was a dermatologist. And so when I went to med school, I kind of naively thought everyone's been to the dermatologist. No, they have not. And so I, in med school, remember going through all the different specialties. And I think I'm someone who is always pretty smiley. I was always told that growing up, like, you're always smiley in the pew, my pastor said. You're always happy. And I was excited on every rotation, just about. But when I got to dermatology, there was pediatrics, there was adult medicine, there was thinking, but there was using your hands, doing biopsies.
Very vast.
All the lasers, the first generation lasers, for the most part, were invented by dermatologists. Mitchell Goldman, all these different lasers, that's who the inventors were. But Botox, the inventor was a dermatologist. The Carruthers out of Canada.
I mean, there's when you look back at it, if you put it, I mean, when you put it in those words, it seems like
It's
a lot of the medical stuff we know nowadays has been done by dermatologists.
Which is interesting, right? And so I felt like, oh my gosh, this specialty has everything. And so I threw my hat in the ring to match in a dermatology, and I matched, and I've loved it ever since.
Oh man, has there been any days where you've, kind of looked at a different career and were like, oh, maybe
Oh my gosh, Wednesday? Because on Wednesday this week, there was an accident where someone accidentally deleted our templates. They thought they were just deleting them off their computer.
Goodness,
So everything crashed in my clinic. My nurses were taking hand notes, and you just got to go in the next room and smile to the patient and say, I'm so sorry, I fell behind.
Right.
But we've been having a heck of a day.
I was gonna say that's when that happens to me. That's when I go, I love technology. I should have written it down before I deleted it.
But you know what? Thursday was a new day, and everyone pitched in, and we're fixing our templates, and it's all going to be okay.
And now we're here today.
And we're here today.
Yes, exactly. Talking about kind of your new book and talking a little bit about your career. What are some of the lessons you've learned, at least from writing the book, or even just your career?
Right. Well, I want to talk about one lesson I learned about like guidelines, because I think that so often people are like, well, the guideline of my vitamin D was fine. And it's like, well, do you really understand the etiology of that guideline, which means where it came from? And most people don't. So, the U.S. government is conservative for a reason, because they have to be careful that they safeguard against giving incorrect advice, but that often causes a different problem.
Right.
And then when new evidence strongly supports towards updating these guidelines, it can take years for agencies to update them. For instance, vitamin D, the guidelines haven't been updated since 2011. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, why is this happening?
Right.
Well, let's talk about it. So let's say we said there's too much sugar in recommended in a day. Like, this is how much sugar you should have. Then the school lunches in the United States that are paid for by the government would have to reflect that. And so Congress would have to pay for that, and that have to get funded. So a lot of times when we change guidelines, it has a ripple effect. And so like the academies are, the Academy of Dermatology, the Academy of Plastics, they're slow to change their guidelines because they want to be certain of the impact. And I respect that. But also I think vitamin D is a big game changer. And that's in my book, a lot of like how to get the proper vitamin D.
And kind of just giving a little sneak peek as to how vitamin D is a game changer. Again, if you want to find out more, you're going to have to pre-order that book ahead of time. But just give our viewers a little sneak peek as to how vitamin D can be a game changer for someone.
Right. So the World Health Organization has determined that a good portion of the population has insufficient levels. And it's a troubling fact because vitamin D low levels has been, in many studies, been associated with Alzheimer's, 15 different types of cancer, type 2 diabetes, depression, schizophrenia, poor bone health, heart disease, autoimmune disease, and hair loss. And so I cite those studies in here, many, many, many. And we need for the guidelines to catch up to protect us.
No, and I mean, that's, as you just saw my reaction, that's very
15 types of cancer,
yes.
Right.
I mean, it's just insane how much one vitamin can affect one's body in so many different ways. So
and you need to have the cofactors, vitamin
yes.
A and K, along with D,
right.
ADK.
So all of the
Colorful plate of food.
Yes, exactly.
We've talked about that in our segments.
Yes. And it kind of, again, sorry if I'm looking around or if we're looking around, again, the newsroom gets busy after a while. And
that was happening when they were making
yes.
the wings today. I wasn't used to that, and I was like, those look really good. Like,
it's like trying to look at everything that's going on.
Right.
But kind of tying it back to the kind of the book here. So is this information just some part of what the viewers can kind of understand a little bit?
Right.
Get a little insight into this is how this functions. This is what it can help.
This is
me
the
with.
history of it. This is what I can do to change my diet and
Right.
protect myself.
And since there's so many fields, at least from what I'm gathering here, when it comes to dermatology, it can also help the dermatologist who's trying to learn a little bit more of a different field.
Right, because I think a lot of dermatologists, they might eschew aesthetic medicine and think, I'm going to do regular medicine. And it's like, well, this is medicine. And keeping our toe in that water as well is important. And then working together so that we're benefiting patients. I mean, it needs to be that at the end of the day, anytime you make a decision as an aesthetic practitioner or as any doctor, it needs to be, is this the best for the patient? Because we all got into this for that reason.
Right. And it seems like a good message, especially
Right.
for someone that does deal with various people every day. And kind of going back to your book, is there more information kind of
Collagen powder.
Yes.
Collagen powder. Many retrospective studies looking at different types of collagen powder, and they're all pretty much equal. And in fact, if you just ate those amino acids, you would get the same effect. So quinoa has all 20 amino acids in it, that ancient grain. And when you eat amino acids, those are protein building blocks. And that's the best way to get that for your collagen.
So do you have those kind of tips and tricks in your
Yes,
book?
page 37.
Oh man, well you're gonna have to check that out if you do end up getting it. But that's cool that you also added, pardon me, kind of those tips and tricks to be able to kind of
Save money,
yes,
but be healthy.
Yes, it's so it has a little bit of everything. I mean,
Right.
like we mentioned earlier, it seems like it has a little bit of everything
Well,
while also being
And
educational.
I think sunscreen, so one of my chapters like really dives into sunscreen. And I think if you understand, when we first developed sunscreens in the United States, we just talked about SPF, right?
Yes.
And that correlates only with UVB rays. So UVB rays burn our skin and are blocked by window pane glass. So we thought you only needed to wear it when you were outside. Well, then there were some tanning beds where they replaced the ratio of lights in the tanning beds and made them pure UVA.
That sounds familiar. Yes.
Yeah, in the 80s and 90s. And then researchers found rapidly growing squamous cell skin cancers that were DNA fingerprinted with pure UVA from a tanning bed. And they were much more aggressive than a natural squamous cell skin cancer. And so we realized, UVA, which comes through window pane glass in our car and in our home, is not blocked by sunscreen, is also carcinogenic. So then we relabeled sunscreen in America to broad spectrum.
Right.
But then we've discovered that blue light from our computers and devices also can cause free radicals. And then visible light, which of course you see the rainbow when you're outside,
Right.
that comes through your window pane glass and that can cause free radicals. So our sunscreens are woefully antiquated, so they need to be updated. And there are a few that block those, but not all. So I talk about that as well. And then infrared. If you're driving in the car and you can feel that heat,
Yes. I definitely know what you're talking about. Yes.
yeah, you're getting infrared rays. And what that's causing is your blood vessels start to grow. We call that proliferating. And that's why you see people have a lot more blotchy red skin if they're outside a lot of the time, or the driving side of their face is more sun damaged and gets more cancer.
Huh.
There's many studies supporting that.
That's crazy to hear. That would have never crossed my mind if you didn't just tell me that.
So in fact, if this is funny, in America, it's usually men, the left side of their face is more sun damaged, and women, the right side, were probably passengers. And then in the UK, when they did the study, it's reversed.
Right, because
Yeah.
you drive on the opposite
Other side,
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's insane to know about, and the fact that you added that to your book is that's
Yeah.
crazy. It's and it's stuff like that makes it worth it, I suppose, right?
Right. Well, okay, so I spent 5 hours one day just diving into red light. I get text messages all the time. Should I buy this red light device? And let's talk about that. So I was in med school at the Medical College of Wisconsin, and in 1999, we got a $45 million grant for the Department of Defense. And everyone's like, ooh, I wonder what they're studying. No one knew. It was secret. They were studying a phenomenon that happened on the space station. So the astronauts, when they were working on the vegetables they were growing underneath red light.
Right.
When they got back to Earth, the skin on their hands was much better than the skin elsewhere. So they were like, what does red light do for keeping our skin young, keeping us young, keeping our bones young? So Huntsville, Alabama, the NASA site, got part of a grant. Medical College of Wisconsin, where I ironically was at, got the other part.
Right.
They started studying it, and fast forward to 2025, I would say so many of my patients have in-home red light devices for regrowing their hair or for other things. And so I talk about that in here. Now, anything that's good is in
Right.
moderation, right?
Right.
So there's always a protocol. Like for hair loss, it's 3 times a week. But these people that do it too often, like daily to their face, they're photo-aging. They're getting older too quickly. So everything, when I talk about the balance of how to navigate that in the book as well.
And like you mentioned, yes, of course, everything is in moderation. In moderation, everything can be, some stuff can be well. Some
Right.
stuff can do well. But, you know, it's cool that you added this to your book, and it's cool that the people who are going to pick up this book can kind of learn about this information, learn a little bit more about your field, your expertise. In the book, is there kind of talk a little bit about what we were talking about in Good Morning Black Hills? Can we touch back on that?
Sure.
I believe it was like the final two.
Right.
Quick
So I
guides.
have a quick guide at the end for aging treatments by age. So I think that you'd be surprised the people that probably, so in studies, the people in America that are spending the most amount of money on their skincare, who would you guess that is?
Oh man, if it were up to me, I'd say social media influencers are like looking at 20 to 40. But I think the answer you're going to give me is going
You're
to be.
actually correct.
Okay.
And it's so funny because my dermatology colleagues are like, oh no, they're too young, they won't spend their money. It's the older patients. No. The older patients are very thoughtful, conservative. The average person doesn't spend a lot on their skincare procedures. But you put the average person in the age group you mentioned,
Right.
they do. They spend a lot more per capita
Man.
on aesthetics because they've grown up with it.
Right, and I mean, at some point, I feel like there also has to be the aspect of maybe social media having an effect on it. And have you seen that? Especially, I know we talked about it.
We did
one
that TV
point.
interview
Yes.
in the fall. We
Yes.
talked about one of your reporters. We talked about Sephora kids, where all these little tweens are going to Sephora, and they were over applying skincare products to their face,
Yeah.
and actually harming their face because their skin isn't ready for it.
Right, and I think there was another one talking about beef tallow.
Oh my
as
gosh,
well.
right?
And
That was a TikTok trend.
Yes.
And it's clogging the pores with the oil from it, and so it's not good for your skin. There is a benefit to bone broth, like drinking,
Right.
but from my research, not on the skin. And the Academy of Dermatology keeps out sending press alerts saying, "Please no" to the patients.
So are there in your quick guides? Are there stuff as well to kind of
Right. I
let
talk about
yes.
prejuvenation for those younger age people, not doing too much when they're really young, and then I talk about things you should start with when you're old, a little bit older. And I think my book coach, she's like, Lycia, you love lasers so much, and I'm like, I love lasers. Lasers are amazing because they not only make you look younger at the end of it, but many of the newer ones treat precancers when you have them done.
Okay.
Not covered by insurance.
Right.
But how good is that to be like, I spent some money on a laser, but I also treated my precancer.
Exactly. Kind of
Yeah.
helped yourself in the process, even though yes, but hey,
Right.
at the end of the day, it can be worth it.
Right.
And also, really quickly, because I'm just curious. Every time we say laser, I think of this big, like
Austin Powers.
Yes.
So laser is light amplified stimulated emission of radiation. So it's just an acronym for a very broad meaning. And you can have a laser that has one wavelength. So we have a laser that inside this box has a bunch of mirrors, the light bounces off, and out comes just 595 nanometers wavelength.
Oh, man,
So that's in the
tiny.
visible light
Yeah.
spectrum, and that's going to target red.
Right.
We have a broadband laser. My favorite is the Cyton Heroic. I love it. It's a great laser. But we have a broadband laser. It's a new generation of the IPL lasers, and it works in the visible light spectrum. So 420 nanometers all the way up to 760. So it can do so many different things, depending what you dial in. It can treat acne. It can tighten your skin. It can treat red spots, brown spots, collagen. And there's studies out of Harvard and Hopkins that it's really doing these things, it says.
Oh man, well that's great. great. I mean, I might have to dive into the world of lasers
Right.
as well myself. And kind of, as we start to
Well, there's lasers that like cut your skin too. So people think about that when they have eye surgery, right?
Right.
So those are ones that are targeting water.
Mhm.
So they're like 10,600 nanometers wavelength.
Oh.
And then there's ones that are computer pattern generated
Right,
that kind of ablate your skin but don't make it bloody like the old days.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like power washing your deck.
And do you talk about that in your book? Oh my goodness! Well, there's another topic in case to get you more interested.
Oh my
There's another
gosh, I had to
topic.
reach out to the different laser companies and be like, is this true about yours? And I referenced the societies and the graphs. And then I made my poor husband do. Have you guys heard of a Vizia machine before?
I have not. No.
Okay, so Vizia is a machine that has a red channel in it, and it tells you how much sun damage you have and how old you are. And I was like, okay, Shannon, you're going to get a Vizia done. We're going to see how old your skin is. And so he got a Vizia done, and it showed that.
Yeah, you could see. Yep, right
Yeah.
there. Oh,
So
my
it showed
goodness.
that his skin was a year older than his chronological age. And I was like, okay, then we're going to laser you, and we're going to see how old your skin is. So we did a combination Moxie laser, which is kind of that power washing your deck, and then we did a broadband laser. We layered them together. And then we waited several weeks and did another Vizia machine showing if it actually worked.
Right.
And it took 3 years off his age, so then he was 2 years younger than his chronological age.
Huh.
Started at, started at 58, said he was 59, now he's down to 56. And I showed my book coach, and she's like, it's not dramatic enough for people to understand. And so I was like, Shannon, you got to do another laser. And he was like, so he comes in, and he does a light laser and a BBL again, BBL light laser and a Moxie power wash your deck. And we did a post-test. He lost 3 more years, so now he's down to 53.
Okay.
And he's like, I'm catching up to you. And I'm like, mind you, I've been getting lasered since 2011, so you have a little bit of work to do, Shannon, I said. But we have pictures in the book of that as well, just so you can learn about the Vizia. You can learn about how you can make your skin healthier. And interestingly enough, he had a precancer that we treated with a chemotherapy cream, and that's where that was years ago.
I was gonna see there.
Yeah,
Is that where
yeah, that's where the white spot is.
Okay.
And I mean, it's not a scar; it's a chemo cream scar. It's not like a linear scar, but we got rid of the cancer, so that was great to do as well.
And that sounds. First of all, sounds like a very kind of in-depth look at some of the work that dermatologists do.
And all I got was this much of the book for all that work. And for the red light, it turned into 2 sentences. So there was so much more research, and I learned so much more that ended up at the book, but I can share it with you all today.
No, and it's wonderful. And, if some of our viewers are interested to kind of get this book again, what should they expect?
Okay, so on February 21st, I ask all of you, please, to go on Amazon and buy it on that day. Because if I can get a lot of people to buy it on that day, I want to hit bestseller list. So I'm asking all of you to please help me do that. And you don't need to buy a lot of copies, just 1 copy from it has to be different Amazon accounts.
Right.
So that's my favor to ask today, to buy a copy. And it's really well priced. It's $15.99, so not expensive.
Yeah. And then for all the information, I mean, come on.
Oh, just even at the end, we have a quick cancer spotting guide that you can cut out and you can keep so you can spot cancer on your skin.
Well, I mean, like I said, if people are interested, I know there are a lot of our viewers are very interested. I know some of our viewers are very much into kind of the skincare aspect of their health, and it's very important.
I have patients say to me, they'll have a visit with me, and I'll have spent 40 minutes with them, and I'm like, okay, I have to go. I can't spend any more time in here.
Right.
But it's all going to be in the book. Everything that I keep telling my patients that they should be doing to stay healthy from the inside out is in here. But this is fun. My kids that are over 18, they consented to be the models for making the faces that I have patients make before they have Botox. We do this so that you don't just do Botox based on a template.
Right.
You do it based on what muscles are thicker and getting bigger or what bothers patients. And so my sweet daughters are in here. I didn't let the one under 18 be in there. I said, you're too young. But the ones that are over 18, they're my models for that. And the one who had to do the neck muscle right here, the platysmal bands, that comes on label this month. with Allergan for treating these platysmal bands.
Mhm.
I've been doing that for a few years in my practice off-label. But for those women who have like maybe been doing CrossFit and have really thick platysmal bands and it bothers them, or that have jowls, because if you treat those bands, it reverses the jowls.
Right.
That's something we can do. But my daughter said the next day that actually hurt from practicing it so much.
Right.
And that tells you that like when you're doing sit-ups, don't recruit your neck muscles. Prevent that from a young age.
Oh my goodness.
When you build your core, don't use your neck. There's a reason why these things happen. You're never supposed to have a thick neck like that. I guess unless you're a wrestler.
Right.
But
Well, I mean, that is wonderful. I mean, and as we kind of take a kind of wrap up here and kind of recap here, what is a message? What is the main message you hope people take away from your book, from kind of this interview that we've just had? What is the main message you would like people to kind of take?
well, there's one important thing we forgot. So a lot of people are on Ozempic or
Right.
other GLP-1 agonists.
Yes.
And the important thing with that is you need to eat a lot of protein while you're losing the weight. Otherwise, you'll lose your muscle tone, and it's a Scooby-Doo face. And there's a lot of skin things that you can do while you're losing the weight, and red light hair therapy so you don't lose hair while you're on the GLP-1 agonist. But I spent a lot of time, I interviewed the former president of the National Board of Obesity for America, and he lives in North Dakota. And so I interviewed him and took a lot of his advice in the book as well. He runs a weight loss clinic. And so for people that are doing that, no one's really talking about it, but yet they are.
Right.
And so that's in here as well.
Kind of
and-
do those preliminary.
And if you wait until you
yeah.
lose the weight, there's a lot of things we can't fix. So without surgery. So that's in the book as well. But to answer your question, this book is a call to action for all practitioners in the industry to level up their knowledge and skills and take a more patient-centered approach. With collaboration, we can rise together for the benefit of our patients.
Oh man, that's such a great message too. Very inspirational. I think that
Thank you.
fits. I think that fits everything that you've been trying to that you've attempted and made into a book. So I'm excited to see this come out. If you really quick let our viewers know when they can get it, where they can get it, just as a
February 21st on Amazon. Get your copy that day. It's going to be on Amazon for a long time, but I want February 21st, please. That will mean a lot to me.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else regarding your book and kind of your career that you would like to let our viewers know before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I would like to say that my first passion, like I always talk about, is preventing skin cancer and educating children about that. And in 2007, Made for Shade was incorporated, and it was a charity that I thought of while I was at a business meeting, sort of thinking, we're talking here about profits and all of that, and at the end of the day, I just want to start a charity and teach kids about not having skin cancer. So that night at the end of the meeting, I asked my partners from dermatology, and they were like, yeah, we're in. And I asked my friends, and after 18 years, we've grown from grassroots to over $70,000 a year.
Oh my goodness.
And I have a very diverse community board of directors now, and we met last week, and I'm super inspired for what's next this year. We're going to grow, and we want to grow beyond the Black Hills. And come support us on Made for Shade, our website and our Facebook and Instagram. And join us for our annual gourmet food and wine tasting event, June 12th.
And it sounds like June 12th. It sounds like it's going to be a very exciting time.
And this kind of looks Grecian, right? The theme this year is a Grecian Isles, sailing around the Grecian Isles.
Well, that's perfect right there.
Buy your dress.
Yes. Buy your dress. Buy the book.
Wear your
Be there.
sunscreen.
Yes. Yes, that is very important. I know that is a very big topic that we talk about on Good Morning Black Hills is wear your sunscreen.
Every day. We just
Yes.
talked about why. Put it on your kids, too.
Well, with that being said, thank you again, Dr. Lycia
This went
Thornburg.
fast.
Yes, it
You
did.
made it easy.
Well, I tried. I tried my best to make it seem. It's actually, we've been, I believe, if I'm looking at the time correct, about 39 minutes. So, hey, we beat the what's it called?
The record?
Yes, sort of, I believe. Maybe.
And we could
I
keep
believe
going.
that.
We really could.
100%. But with that being said, thank you again, Dr. Lycia Thornburg, for kind of joining me here at the Now Desk, kind of giving you the spotlight today to promote your book. Kind of
Thank
tell us
you.
a little bit about who you are as a person and as about your career, because I know a lot of people don't get that inside look into what a dermatologist actually does.
Right. We treat diseases of the skin, hair, and nails. And I'm a mom, and I'm a wife, and I've been a dermatologist for 21 years. And I've served on many community boards. I was on 7 boards before I started this book. And so I had to kind of cycle those off so I could spend time on this. But my main passion is my Made for Shade charity, like I talked about, and my family. And my daughters are in grad school, college, and still in high school at Stevens.
And really quickly, before I do kind of say goodbye to our viewers, is there a social media page that our followers can follow you at?
Right. Oh, gosh, thank you. Gosh. At Lycia Thornburg, MD on Instagram, and then Lycia Thornburg, MD on Facebook and TikTok.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for your time this morning.
Right. They can follow that QR code as well to get to all my social media. Yeah, follow me on social media, please.
Yes.
That would be great.
I think the more exposure we have, the more...
people will wear their sunscreen.
Exactly. Well, thank you again for taking some of the time out of your morning to kind of talk with me. And thank you for tuning into the KOTA Now Author Spotlight. For now, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your Friday morning.